The rain and snow that falls in the Big Hole represents the most headwater of headwaters in the upper Missouri drainage, which obviously feeds the entire Mississippi. The upper Big Hole is this big sink where all of the precip flows into this large basin, ringed by mountains almost completely. Ecologically, that's really important because of the storage capacity that that soil has in this giant bathtub to hold on to water longer. Feels like the type of place we really want to hang on to. As a stream ecologist, when I see a waterfall or a headcut that is worrisome, because headcuts basically are the formation of a drain that's going to take water out of a system and move it downstream as fast as possible. As soon as you have one nick point, then the water starts splashing down, destabilizes, and that nick point runs upstream. If you lose that groundwater plume, it would take years to refill it, and then you'll see vegetation change dramatically from what we have now. Given the precipitation changes and climate, our best hope for the Big Hole is to keep whatever water we get on the landscape as long as possible.
The Big Hole Valley is a magical place. This beautiful high elevation valley has a great, large, intact sagebrush community. For years, there had been these questions about the sage-grouse population in the Big Hole. Where were they lekking? Where were they nesting? Where were they raising their brood? Where were they wintering? It's outside of the designated sage-grouse recovery zone and important habitat, but yet there's recognition that we have this bird population in the Big Hole Valley. We said, let's see if we can't put some radio telemetry on some of these birds and answer some of these questions that we have. So letting the birds tell us their story. And they told it really well, I thought. In the Big Hole, we have about 8 known leks. Typically, these areas are openings within sagebrush, and the birds will congregate on them during April, early May. I just keep scanning back and forth, left and right, counting as I go, because they're moving around, and so I might count more one time, and then the next time I get a different number, because some of them are moving in and out of the sagebrush. We've got wonderful data on the movements of pronghorn through the Big Hole Valley, and we have data on the sage-grouse. We've done a bunch of pygmy rabbit surveys, and everything just lines up right on top of each other in those sage-grouse habitat areas. So if you conserve it for one, all those other species are getting protection as well. Just to stand in these big, wide open natural habitats with these ancient rhythms that continuously play out. That's what makes my heart beat. They gave us answers to all of that, and they showed us where very important areas are in the Big Hole, and Smith Springs lit up as one of those important areas. So this one was on one of the hens, 174160. She left the Big Hole in the wintertime, and we captured her on the 24th of April in 2018 on the Mud Lake Lek. And then in 2020, she actually was killed on her nest.
So these 2 leks are within a mile of our Smith Springs restoration site, straight over that way. We came upon that site when we had one of our collared females was a mort over there. And so I was walking to find it, and I was like, wow, this is nice little mesic wetland, wet meadow complex, but fairly degraded.
He noticed a huge headcut that was cutting into this large peat wetland. We looked at it from aerial imagery and saw that it had migrated substantially in about 70 years that we had historic record. Downstream of the headcut has dried out. There's sagebrush growing where it used to be sedges and wetland plants. 80% of all of the wildlife species in Montana are associated with wetlands of the type that you find in Smith Sage Springs. So if we lose these wetlands, those animals will all find somewhere else to be.
That's super important for these birds that are typically going to be nesting within a couple miles of here, especially for the broods to go down into those wet meadows later on in the summer.
Jim was excellent about taking the data that the birds were giving us, and then he had excellent relations with landowners in the Big Hole Valley. He would take those maps generated by the sage-grouse movement and sit down with landowners and say, here's your land, here's where the birds are at this time of year, and can we take a walk out on the ground and take a look at some of these features that are out there?
I kept looking at it closer through a few years and just worked with the watershed group and Fish, Wildlife and Parks on developing a restoration plan, and that was the start of it.
We had all of the cooperation we needed from the local landowner who thought it was a good idea and has agreed to basically take this whole zone out of production for him for up to 5 years so that we could restore the system, let natural processes come back into life, and then he'll decide if he wants to get his cows back in there grazing at some point or not.
This is a log structure cross section in here.
Yep.
So they're gonna do pilings and then geotextile. That head cut is lowering the groundwater table away, starting to actually cause this thing to dry up. On our preliminary design, what we wanted to do is spread out water, restore groundwater connection to this project, realign the channel away from the active head cut.
The water is seeping out from this side of this little valley here. And originally this water was hitting this and going straight down into the basically ditch. And now we can reconnect these surfaces and have this water spread out here and soak into the groundwater.
We wanted to install basically grade control structures or buried debris jams and logwood steps to hold that grade elevation in.
From a distance, you look at what's being done and it feels like we're putting this landscape back together the way it wants to be. The contractors are super efficient, they're smart, they know what they're doing, they're artists. This is the joy of this work.
When we come back here in 2 or 3 years, you know, if you're not trained up in this kind of stuff, you'd have no idea what the heck went on. You would just look at it and think, wow, that's beautiful. That's what really gets me excited.
Since we graded all that out, we use that material to backfill our active head cut.
If we're gonna have water in the West in the future with a changing climate scenario, we can't lose places like this.
One of the things I think about sometimes keeps me up at night when we're doing a big, large-scale project like this. You know, are we gonna do the right thing? Is this gonna work?
This is the center line right here.
Center line?
What we don't want to see is we come back here in a year and a half and there's actually starting to head cut up again. So we were really thoughtful and strategic on how we wanted to tie all these surfaces in.
This is where one of the big head cuts was.
Really what we want is this whole entire thing to just be a sponge, which will have a huge benefit for the hydrology for a ways downstream.
The weather is gorgeous. Typical Big Hole weather in late September. And I've been working with Ben and Pedro to improve water quality and habitat out here. It's a new project for us. We haven't really done this big of a wetland project, and so we're really excited to see the outcome.
There's going to be capillary.
Yeah. So and I'm already seeing it.
Because there's no gravel, right? So there's nothing that's going to stop water from just perking. It'll perk up like a candle.
You know, you're going to get it laterally.
Yep.
And this is going to, basically the bathtub's going to come up.
In a couple of years, this will be green, green, green.
We want to have a series of checks to make sure that we're making water hit these, climb up, and go over them. So it's just checking up the groundwater.
We also wanted to do more than just stop the bleeding. We wanted to see if we could actually enhance and create wetland in the process of restoring the existing wetland.
Right now, there's a lot of upland seed in all of this area. Eventually, as this thing soaks up and gets really wet, it'll essentially flood out all the seed in here. This area will slowly transition into a wetland.
I feel good about this particular project because we have these insurances to know that when we walk away, this is going to be better than it was when we started. And that's the whole goal of doing ecological restoration.
Smith Springs was one of those big projects. When it gets done and when you've had heavy equipment on a piece of ground like that, it looks horrible. It looks like a bomb went off. But we've done this enough that we know what these systems are capable of in terms of bouncing right back. We have a good sense of the tweaks that need to be made to give the ecosystems the jump start they need without overdoing it and overplaying our hand. The system as a whole and the design has worked flawlessly, and we know that the water and the hydrology is working the way we want it to based on what we're seeing from the vegetation. Before we started this project, this was about 11-foot hole in the ground. So it's hard to believe that this is where that was. You can see the sagebrush stems up here, these dead little stems. That was sagebrush because this was all high and dry. And now we're seeing sedges and grasses starting to grow up. That's the ecological switch that we've turned on. These projects take a long time. From when Jim McGee walked out here and saw the hole in the ground to right now, it's taken 5 years. Because of the time that it takes to get this work done, because of the resources that are required, we need to get to a phase where we are scaling up this type of work across the West. These important wetlands that support all of the wildlife that the general public wants, a vast majority are on private land. And in the Big Hole, these wetlands are supported by the irrigation practices of ranchers. So if we lose ranchers, we lose floodplains, we lose the flood irrigation that they do, we actually lose these wetlands.
Oftentimes, you get one project like this, it leads to other landowners saying, oh, wait, I see sage-grouse congregating and we got some headcuts and maybe we can do the same thing here or something similar.
They understand the value of these resources. They understand the value of public wildlife and managing private land so that public wildlife can benefit from it, and we all benefit from their work. And since we're the headwater, everybody benefits from what we get done in the Big Hole. So if we can keep the water cold and keep it lasting longer, everybody downstream benefits in some small way. And that's what we try to do every day.